Hey guys, in this video we'll be looking at Kick 3 by Sonic Digital, and earlier it was named as Sonic Academy. I think for the software they had named it as Sonic Digital. And apart from Kick 3, I would recommend you to also check out Anna. I think it's at Anna 2 right now. So if you're using Kick 3 by Sonic Digital, I think you should also check out Anna 2 by Sonic Digital. So the whole idea of this plugin is that we can synthesize our own kick, right? And now why is this needed? Considering the amount of samples out there, you can just take a sample and just drag it in your project and like call it a day. The thing is, if you can see here, like there's like C, A, G sharp, G, right? So in a project, as you're working, right, you're working in a project which have a scale, right? And every project that which have a scale, right? And if you add a sample, especially a percussion sample, right, because it's usually harder to get what scale it is, but you can tune it. But the fundamental idea of using Kick 3 as a plugin, as like a software which can make kick, is you can tune your kick and make your kick. And I think it's like the coolest way to get that thumb down, knowing that whatever scale you're working on in your project, you can just get your Kick 3 out, and make a kick of that tune. You have your whole scale and your notes, and you can just make a kick out, and you can stack it. And that may be like the biggest thing or aspect that I love about it. And even apart from that, if you say that I love samples, that I like to have samples, so also you can do is like layer Kick 3 along with your samples, whatever samples that you may be using for kick, right? So the whole idea of this video, in this I'm going to be talking about first this overview section of what this is, like display, and I'm going to slowly go with everything that's out there, right? And in this there may be time when I will be jumping from one point to next, especially like the snap and like gate or like some pitch and amp, I mean, but know that I will like come back and talk about it in detail as we go, right? So let's begin. So at this moment, as you can see in this display, I have this kick sample, and this sample is in reality a sine wave, right? And that sine wave, if you see, it's like at C10, like it's like a very high frequency at a 17.2 kilohertz, right? And then it's dropping down from 17.2 kilohertz to just 448 hertz, right? And that also as I'm going through it, if you can see, you can see here, like there's like this time second, right? 0.519, right, when I'm here, right? But if I move from here to here, you can see like it's like 0.000 second, right? Now it's just 1, where A4 is, that's also it's like little further. What I mean to say is this kick is actually synthesized by taking a sine wave and like dropping the pitch down at such a high speed, at a very small time scale, where like it's like in very milliseconds. I don't know like what is like 0.00 possible, yeah. So that, right? And with that you get this sound, and this is the sound of like the kick. And because of that every instrument, guitar, piano, or like any instrument which are like harmonic in nature, or like or melodic in nature, or anything like that which have a certain tone to it, right? You can hear it, right? But any sound which is like a percussion sound, you may not hear it, right? So you may not hear the tone of it, right? And that's how we get our percussion sounds, which are usually called as like the untuned the instruments, right? So here we have this kick, like, and it's like sine, and like it's dropping at 448 hertz at A4, and then it's going like even drastically reducing down, like coming down to like 53 hertz, and then like just sloping down, like. So the whole idea of this kick is this is divided, like I would say, in 3 or 4 parts. Like at this moment I would say like the 3 parts, like this part, this like this drop, and then this part which is like like the subtle slope, and this like longer part. I would say this part is where like transient hit is happening, like it is just a hit, that the initial hit is happening, right? And right now I have this click, I'm gonna mute it. So right now you can hear just a kick, right? And that is the sub of the kick, right? If I add this click also, you can hear the sound, right? So now let's just focus on this. We are focus on just a sub, right? So I have this and it's dropping down. So this is the initial, you know, transient phase point where, you know, like you get that initial hit, right? And then this part is, you know, like the, what to say, main thumping part, right? Like this, like which you can feel it, right? If I change it, just look what happens. One thing I would recommend you is, like, when you're especially moving this one, don't go too high, because, you know, it's like, you know, then there's like too much of the frequency here then, right? For this part, right? And then this to this is, you know, you get this like low sub, you know, like, which moves. Like if I just take it and just put it up, you know, just see what happens, right? Basically the tail end side, you know, what's happening to it. And also one more thing is, like, I can just, you know, take, you know, like just click and just, you know, make a, what to say, a slope out of it I want to. And I have clicked here, like double clicked here, and like now I got another point. So like now I can work with 3 points. So the basic whole idea premise of this is, you know, this kick is this initial, these points are that, you know, you have this initial transient, and then you have like thumping, you know, the place where it thumps, and then this is like the low point where, you know, like this, like as you can see, like the tail end is happening. Then I can also delete that if I don't need it. Okay, let's get back. And then, you know, if as I'm moving, as you can see, it's like, see the hertz, right? It's 302 and like 338, 350, 360, right? So there is like this button snap here above, and if I click it, now it's gonna like just jump in, like, or jump below, like depending on how you're moving up or down in semitones, right? As you can see. So with that, you know, you can, I would say, like, get a better idea of like what note is being changed. But, you know, if you don't want it, just turn off the snap. And beside that, there's like this gate. What this gate will do is, like, it's basically playing with this, right? As you can see, I'm just gonna move it here. I have this note, like the same note playing, right? And right now the gate is on. Okay, so what the gate is doing is, if I'm just gonna take this first sample and just reduce it. Okay, listen to what happens now. So basically what's this gate, you know, this gate knob is doing is, the MIDI note that you're using, if you reduce the size of the note, what's going to happen is, since the gate is on, you know, it's going to shut off like the sound. Yeah, this plugin like will see and how much the note is being played, and if you're like cutting it off at a certain point, then the gate will, you know, actually turn off the kick. Just look at the sound. Just look at the sound, how it's going. Just first sound, right? And now if I increase it, even more, you can see the first, just see the first sample and put it against the other sample. So you can see if I reduce this one, right? So that's the whole point of this gate. So after that, you have this amp. What this amp is, this is like the basic amplitude, you know. So if I change it, listen to what the sounds, what's happening to the song. Right, this is basically like the envelope which is controlling what's happening here. So, you know, you have developed a pitch here, how the kick will sound, like the pitch of the kick, and then in this amp, this is like the envelope where, you know, will decide where, you know, the sound will ramp up or ramp down. Like, you know, it will change drastically how your kick will sound. Okay, then you have this option of presets where you have all these different type of sub preset, right? These are the preset for how your this will be. So if I just click the next one, just look at what's happening with this. I would recommend you check this, or also check this out, because like these are the preset sections, so you may enjoy it a lot. So apart from sub, we have this click section also. This click is basically, I'm scrolling and I can like move like closer to the what's happening in the waveform. Okay, and now I'm on the click, and this click sounds like this. You can imagine, you can think about this click is like this, like the top of this whole kick, this click part, and the sub is like the bottom, like in the sense like lower side, where like you have this low frequency playing, and you have this high frequency, and you get this sound of a kick. And actually I can add even more 3 layers of sub or click, right? And every time I click it, it will give me an option of what type of sub I want, right? As you can see, but I'm gonna remove this one now. Okay, let's get back to our click. And from here you can this button, as you can see here, you can choose if you want to see the waveform of both. And the idea is simple. It also have this amp and pitch, but because the sound is like so what's it, like it's very small, right? So it won't change a lot, but let's test it out. So basically not much, but I think even the smallest thing in this, it will count. Let me go back and come here, and in this, as you can see right now, I have both of these sounds, and let me just turn it on. And right now both of the sounds are playing, and there's like this one important concept of phase, and I think I'm going to talk about phase, but before that I want to talk about this and then come back to phase. And that is very essential, especially to the sounds which have low frequency, and because there's a lot of rumbling can happen and lot of phase cancellation can happen, and it can mess up the whole project if you're not careful with that. So now, as I've already talked about this sub and this click, and I have told you that we have this like this sound which is like very close, in the sense like the frequency or like the spectrum, like the waveform, as I've seen, like the sub is blue and the click is green, right? And it's aligned nearly, not exactly here, but like on the lower half. So I want to talk about this phasing thing, like because this phasing will cause you a lot of trouble if you're not careful, especially with the lower frequencies. And what's basically is going to happen is, actually I'm going to just take at this sound, let's just start with it. I'm just gonna show you what's gonna happen. I have this like sound playing, and what I'm gonna do is like just bounce it out in audio. Just duplicate it and bounce the first and the track. So right now I have this one in audio form and one in like MIDI, right? Actually it's far better to take one more. Like I have turned off the MIDI one. Like I have these two, and like what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna add a plugin utility. I'm adding a utility plugin here, so on the second one basically. The reason is, what I'm gonna do is I have this option of like in input, like inverting L and R, right? So right now we have these two sounds, and what's happening is, because they're duplicated and they are basically an identical sound in every possible way, right? You can see the waveform and it's basically same in both, right? So basically what's going to happen is, because the waveform was same, like the sound is same, what's happening is, and it's stacked up. So basically the sound is now double. This was just a single sound, right? And when I added one more, now it's doubled. So now the amplitude basically increased, right? Because we have like basically a copy of the same sound. And on the second sound I have this this option of phase, like inverting the phase. So what I do is I'm going to invert the phase of like L and R, right? So right now we have exactly the same sound, right? and let me turn this off, right? You can hear the sound right now, right? Right. I'm gonna turn this utility on, which have this phasing knobs turned on, and right now I have turned, like, it's playing, right? But where's have the sound gone? Why can't I hear the sound anymore? Why there's like no sound? Like there's literally sound going, but like where's it? Right. So basically what's happening is when I've inverted the sound, what's happening is what's up here, it's going down, right? So it's canceling each other out, right? Now imagine like you have your speaker, okay, and the speaker is like it will move like left and right. Yeah, there is cone of your speaker, and every time the amplitude is increasing, like the sound is going up and down, right? So every time it's going up, the speaker is coming out, and like it's going back. When it's going down, right? And now imagine like on this first one, let's just take this first one, right? It's like, let's take this part, this going up and down, right? So what's happening is this is making the sound of a kick, right? This is basically the waveform, the sound of a kick, and it's going like this, right? The sound of a kick. And now you have another sound which is not exactly same, right? But it's going differently, right? So on one sound, it's going like this to get the sound of a kick, and like this is like going in the opposite way, not exactly, but somewhere in the opposite. So what's happening is one sound is trying to push the speaker front, but other sound is trying to push the speaker back, right? So what's going to happen is going to clash, and that's where the sound which was supposed to be full, right? Because when you edited sound, or like when you recorded sound, it was supposed to be full and good. So why is it sounding thin, or like where is it sound gone? The reason is because there are other sounds which may be causing your sound, the main sound, to not be heard at all, right? So what I'm going to do is I have this and I have this, right? These are basically the same sound, and you can hear it right now. Okay, I'm going to turn this on. Just since you were thinking I've turned it on, like it's not sounding right now, that means I've let something, like maybe like basically this plugin is doing something, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm again gonna bounce this track, right? And right now that plugin is gone. Okay, as you can see, like again we have the same sound, but the plugin was on and I like bounced it out. So now if I zoom here, what you're going to notice is every time one sound is playing down, the other is playing up. When it's going up, it's going down, this going down, is going up. So right, so what's happening is they're canceling each other. There was supposed to be sound playing, but there is no sound happening, right? So if you can see the master right now, by the way, if you're seeing this now, this is connected to the MIDI kick, by the way. Okay, so in any case you're thinking, dude, like I can see some symbols here, so actually it's not connected to any of these, it's connected to this one. Okay, so I have all these both sound, and you can see that there's nothing happening in the master. But if I take this, and even if I move it a little bit, a sound will come. Why? Because now they are not canceling each other, right? Even now one track is completely opposite, but just moving a little bit, you can hear the sound, right? So the whole basic idea, the reason this is supposed to be a video about Kick 3, but it's a very important aspect that you understand is phase cancellation happens, especially for the sounds which are like in lower frequency, and they will like muddy up your mix and like make it thinner, and you will think, dude, where is like my low end gone? And basically what's happening is there are too many frequencies, too many sounds fighting for that space, and one is canceling out each other. So it's and especially important if you're stacking kicks and basses, sounds like that, the more you add, then the more frequency spectrum, like they will be fighting for like the same kick sound if you keep on adding, so you should be careful with that. Okay, so right now no sound is playing, and if I mute this, the sound is playing, right? If I mute this one and this is turned on now, the sound is playing, right? So keep that in mind, and there's an important thing you should know, especially as you'll be working in lower frequencies. So we are back. We have a like sub and a click, and I've already told you about what will happen with these two sounds, you know, when they're two or more, if I add even more layers, you know, they're gonna clash. So you should be careful with the wave, as you'll see the waveform, you know, as we keep on adding sound, you know. I have the sound playing, and then we have this pitch, you know, which you can use, you know, to change the sound of the, since I have clicked on the click, so I can change the sound of this, you know, click. It's the envelope, and I can pan it if I want, and like low pass and high pass. Let me choose something, you know, which may be good. Let's take an acoustic kick. So I have this acoustic kick, and with all of these three, it sounds like this right now. I would like to see all of these three sounds right now. And right now, since there are like three sounds, I can already see, you know, these two sounds will be competing, in the sense like the frequency, because they are in lower frequencies, and I can already see that, you know, at some aspects, at some points, the sound of acoustic 1 and the sub are not aligned, especially I would say like at a more point. So, you know, I can mess with the pitch and, you know, like make it aligned, like at least come close, or like, or play with its envelope to make that happen. If let's add one more, let's add a click this time. You know, this time let's go with something. So now I have 4 sounds playing, and as you can already see the frequency, what's happening here. Apart from this is, you know, like your pitch, envelope, pan, and everything. Then I'll come, like, we're done with this part, we're done with this part, and like this is just adding new layers, you know, you can add this. And we are coming to, oh, one more thing I want to, like, this button, you can see this, like you can change the phase, you know, which I already talked about, you know, using a utility. You know, this basically, you know, you can change it, you know, to just to align your sounds better here. So I was like, this is like main page, as you can see, and then this like effect page, then EQ page, and you can import. Let's talk about import first. I have like this, you know, drag a sample, or like, you know, I can just take a sample and just add it like so. Let me just go to the sounds just here, you know, like, okay, you know, for some reason I just took the Ableton basic core kick. I'm just gonna, you know, take this sound only and just gonna drag it here. Let me just see what sound is playing right now. No, I don't, I need this one. So okay, so right now I got the sound of bass drum. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna like bounce, and now I have this sound. Now what I'm gonna do is take it and drag it here. Okay, and I don't need it completely. I can just take one, or I can just take all, but it's not needed. So for now I'm just going to take one, analyze and import. Right now I'm like talking about import, right? I have not talked about effects and EQ. So right now I have done that, and like I imported that. So what happened is, you know, my first sound, the sub, even the click have changed, right? And what happened is, the kick 3 have analyzed the sound, you know, the sound that I've just brought in, and it has analyzed the sub part and the click part, and it like already found me, you know, and given me the both of the sounds, right? This is like the sub part and this is the click part, so I can hear the sound. Now what the most powerful thing now here I can do is, like, I still have my pitch, so I can, you know, mess with the pitch now, right? And I also have my amp also, right? As you can see, you know, actually, you know, this is first time I'm seeing like this, so many dots here. So you can see like this software is very intelligent, especially regarding, you know, understanding how the sounds are and analyzing them. So that's good. And actually there's like one more, there are 3 layers by the way. This one, and this one. These 2 sounds, as you can see, if I invert this, Listen to the sound, what happened. Okay, and mute this one. Listen to the sound if when I'm inverting the second bounce to this one, right? Basically, you know, like the sound just got thinner, so it's better to just turn it off. I don't need it. And let's turn this back on. Okay, so right now we're just working on these two, not the third one. And now there's like one important thing that I want to talk about. And okay, so I think you got what you can do with your import, and then you have this trigger. Basically what's gonna happen is, I already have a sound here, like, so it will be easy just to show you. I have the sound. What I'm gonna do is take this sound and put it back in kick, right? So what since I'm an Ableton, like, you have to see in your software that you're using, and also gonna move it, like, just for the sake of because you have MIDI, but it doesn't matter because it's at in right now. So I have this sound, and what I did was I went to the the out of this track and routed it to the kick, where in the MIDI, which I have this kick 3 running, and this kick 3 I will I'm on this trigger, and when I play it, I can see as is running, I can see there's like something happening. So now basically what's gonna happen is, like, right now I have a sound playing on the second track, right? This track 2, there's like the sound playing, but actually I cannot hear the sound. What's gonna happen is, every time something's gonna happen here is like this, when the sound is gonna be added here, when the threshold, like the moment I go to the session, like the moment I go and this is playing here, what's gonna happen is I can come to my main and change sound to anything that I want, and instead of this being played, my track will be played, or like the sample that I have, and this will be used as a trigger to play that sound, right? So I hope it was not complicated. And now, so let me actually just take an 808, the first one, like, and I have this sound. I don't know how it's gonna sound, like, I can already see this noise. Just turn off the noise for now. I just want to see the sub. So I have this sub sound, okay, and on my trigger I have this, and to make it work, turn it on active, and every time I get in this area, I can hear the sound, and I can decide how the sound will be, and you can change. I can change to any sound, right? And right now this sound is being used as a trigger to play this sound. If I change it, whatever sound I go to, the sound will sample will change. What is this is basically your harmonics. These are like your harmonics series, like so. If I turn the first one, like, it will kind of same, right? But if I turn the second one on, look at what's going to happen to the waveform here. Okay, right now you may be imagining like something is happening here, but like what's have to do with that, because this is not, I have not touched this knob right now. Okay, so what's happening is I can change how the harmonics of that sub will be, right? And by the way, the more you add, the more harsher the sound will get. Okay, so I just made like added the harmonic series, and now I'm gonna add this, and if I just turn, when I play with the first one, you can see not much is happening. We have this preset also where you can have like different sounds. So with that, you have your sounds. And one thing then, there is this key track. This key track is basically gonna change. This is basically gonna tell the software, dude, right now you're at C2, and if I keep on increasing, you can hear the sound is changing, right? So with every note that I'm changing, the pitch is basically changing, right? So for me to now, the sound that you're hearing, to get this sound, I actually, and if I turn this on, I actually have to go to C1 to get the sound. So once we are done with this, like this whole sub area, the click area, and this pitch and amp, the gate snap on this, visual thing, the tag and this, and now we're gonna come to, and we're done with import and trigger, and now we're gonna come, first I'm gonna talk about EQ. You already know what EQ is gonna do, but you can actually make a basic sound just from here also. And same with the effects, as you can see. Now in this, before I'll talk about all these effects, I want to talk about the insert 1 and insert 2, because insert 1 and insert 2, you have option of this first area, this first module, and you have like, when you add all your sounds, like right now I just heard 2 sounds, right? So if I just turn on the first one, that means this module will only affect this one. This module will affect the one which is highlighted, okay? Or if I turn on both, then both of the sounds will be affected, right? So if I take a clipper, so you can already hear what's happening. I'm just going to turn these off first right now, right? And then you have your second module. I have like added both. Let's add bit crusher. Okay, I would rather like just turn this. And then apart from that, now these next one are, you can add your compressor and all the different things you want. Actually you can add even here. Let me take a filter. Let's take a EQ again, and let's take a compressor, and let's take another compressor, or I would not add delay and reverb, but you know what, let's test it how it sounds. Let me turn these off first. What is complex? I just turned off the filter. Okay, I'm just gonna come to EQ. The whole idea of EQ is you have your where things you can do reduce, and we have a compressor. It has a threshold, and attack, release, makeup, and it's showing how much it's gonna happen. Since I'm gonna kick, I'm gonna have a very sharp and fast attack, and very fast release as well. Makeup, let's see for this required. Now I'm changing the threshold. Now gain reduction will happen. So at this moment about 3.5 dB is being reduced. Let's add delay. It's not delay, no. I would usually not use anything, like especially the effects like the reverb and delays, unless you are just focused on the high, so then you can do it, I would say. So basically you have your effect section here. Sorry, if I just got way too much into that. So here you have a effect section, so let me just turn it off. So we are back to a basic kick. Let me even turn on the EQ. We have this, and like we are import trigger, and then after that, once you're done with this, you have your final limiter if you want it, and and this your out, this your master out. I turn on the limiter, and like it's fast release, and like look ahead I have added medium, and let's like play with this threshold. So it's pretty cool, in this whole thing, they have like effects also, EQ also, and you have a limiter also. So like it's all like one single plugin which have everything, like from creating to polishing the sound to do how you want it. With this, I think we're done with a whole section of kick 3. We have seen how the displays, the subs and like the click, and let me have both in like a very short we'll just talk about everything with tags. You know, turn off these knobs. With snap, you know, you can just get this, you know, to line up to the semitones, or like, you know, you just don't have it, and you know, you can just move smoothly to where you want. You have your pitch, where you know, you can make the sound. You have your amp, where you know, you can decide how the envelope will be, like the how sound will be, you know, or at the end, right? And then for both of them, you know, you have a separate pitch, envelope, pan, and length, right? And then once we are done with that, you have your key track, which, you know, where whatever the MIDI notes that you're putting your notes in, it will change, the sound will change, the sound of the kick will change according to where you put the notes in. Then you have your harmonic series, and you know, it will change how your sound will come, you know. And then if you play with the knob, you know, but I'm not gonna do any of this. And then you can add more subs or more kicks if you want. So basically you can add most layers to make the sound of your kick. You have your main effects. Main is basically this page. Then effects is basically, you know, you can add all your effects that you want. Add this, you can add about 6 effects, and you know, you can, for the insert 1 and 2, you can decide, you know, which of the layer, the sub, kicks, click, or any other clicks that you add or sub that you add will be affected. And then you have your EQ section, where you know, you can EQ it, you know, how you like. You can import sounds that you have samples, and you know, you can, once you're done with that, click the analyze. Once the analysis is done, you know, you will have your sound here, like analyze and import. And then you know, it will like automatically like analyze it and you know, bring it here. So like, it's an awesome thing, that because if you have a certain kick sample that you like, you know, bring it here and actually tune it according to the sound of your project if you need it. And this trigger is basically, you know, route it to a track that the sound that you want, the kick or the way it's been played, and you know, have the sound of this part being, you know, used, the sample of this part is used, and that is only used to trigger it, right? Apart from that, these are the macros you're connected to here, and then you have your limiter, and you know, after that it's going out, right? So with that, we're done with the software Kick 3. I hope you enjoyed this video.